All right, here we go. Trying this new audio thing with my mic. Let me know if you can hear me. Man, lots of interesting things to chat about today. Let's see what's on the forefront of my mind. So I put a ton of stuff in the description, things that I'm thinking about. I think today the main thing I'm going to be thinking about is and talking about. Cool, thank you. Morning, Neil. I was going to talk to you about where you worked in New York. Blue, isn't it Blue something? I'm assuming it was like on Chef's Table, some fancy thing where when you were talking about your randos with Chad, what it was. Anyhow, I thought of you the other day and was trying to remember what that place was. Blue Hill. That's it. Yes, thank you. Okay. So this is going to be one of those things. This is going to be one of those crazy Luke things that's very Mosaic Vision, iconic vision, Personalist knowing, iconic knowing, all my Lukeisms. Because I do want to talk about what I think thinking is and how that relates to memory and Personalist knowing. Because I listened to, Food Truck Emily had her conversation with PVK recently, and it was really good. I mean, she talked about, I'm sure we have, well, I know from interacting with her in the comments that we have tons of overlaps with the different things we've experienced. She's definitely listened to and been very familiar with Derek Webb. She's very familiar with like Enneagram stuff. There's all these resonances, but at one point they were talking toward the end. It's toward the end. I put it in the comments for those that have the member only stuff. I think, hello everyone. And PVK said this line of something where he said sometimes he goes back and revisits old Pageau videos, and he'll say this a lot about Pageau, right? That he, or people will say of Pageau in general that, they, when they first started listening to him, they just like couldn't make heads or tails of what he was talking about. And then over time, you keep listening to him, you keep listening to him, you keep listening to him, and then all of a sudden it starts to click. And a lot of that gets into a proper knowing and what like my Personalist knowing is. And it also makes me think of Nathan Ormond. So I doubt Nathan Ormond. So CW had a chat with Nathan the other day for his first Christian diaspora. I think that's CW's YouTube handle at Christian Diaspora. And he spoke with Nathan, who is if you're in this little corner and you have been very long, you probably, and you've gone very deep, you're familiar with Nathan Ormond, who is he's a really smart guy. And he has had a very interesting story that they go into on CW's channel. It's very worth your time to check out. His handle's Digital Gnosis, but he's very philosophical, and I like to think philosophically too, but he's very technically philosophical. And not like me, he actually reads these philosophers and their books and things rather than just like hearing about them on podcasts and YouTube and taking in a little bit of what they say and then turning it and making it your own. And one of his criticisms of this little corner is that there's a lot of in-speak, there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of made up words. I think it's Chris McDonald, right? Waves of Obsession. He made a video recently about, what's the title of his video? I was just listening to it before I started and I was running around the house. What is it, Chris? Distributed cognition, which, I don't know. I have a little bit of, like PVK will say we think together. Grizz will say distributed cognition. The way that it often feels to me with Grizz is like the Borg, which I have a problem with in groupthink. So a lot of this is going to be talking about what is thinking and inventing words and Barfield and new words versus old words, definitional understandings, mammonistic understandings versus what I would call like a Eucharistic understanding, which Chad is here. Chad, do you remember that first video you made? One of the first videos you made, it's maybe in one of your news videos where I was talking about Eucharistic knowing and mammonistic knowing, and I was using the illustration of apples, where Pageau was talking about in one of his videos of like eating an apple, and it comes in and there's like to eat an apple, for it to actually give you nourishment, you have to eat it. You have to consume it. It has to become part of you. There's a sloughing off in your stomach lining for the apple to be absorbed. And there's this weird, you could think of it scientifically, but it's also like mystical. It's like breathing. Where are the lines between where the breath is and where I am? And where are the lines between where the food is and where I am? And how does all that stuff relate? But that was an illustration, and you had like all these dancing apples in the illustration. I should put that in the show notes or in a comment. It was a funny, really video. That's one of the first videos that made that endeared you to my family, because it was funny and it had clips of me and you were like playfully mocking or making fun of me or whatever. It was great. So like, what is true knowledge? One of my favorite books of the Bible is 1 Corinthians, and 1 Corinthians 8, where it says, knowledge puffs up, but love edifies. If anyone thinks he knows, he does not yet know as he ought to know. But, and then I always forget the end of it. But if he is loved by God, he's known by him or something. I should just look it up. I don't have an actual Bible within reach, but I do have an app. So all this gets into this little corner and kind of what I think it is. So PVK said the other day, which I think is right, that TLC is the telos, the goal, the end, what YouTube is aiming at. And I think that's actually true. So let's see. Yeah. So this is now concerning things sacrificed to idols. We know that we all have knowledge. Knowledge makes arrogant, but love edifies. If anyone supposes that he knows anything, he is not yet known as he ought to know. But if anyone loves God, he is known by him. Yes. You're all over it, Andrew. You got it. What's up, Mills? So, knowledge. I think what St. Paul is saying there by knowledge puffs up, is almost this objective, either or knowing, the post-subjective objective divide, post-Descartes, this certain the modernist view of understanding. Yeah, if TLC is the goal, it's worth noting. Absolutely. So this kind of modernist understanding, which I actually think is solipsistic, because it's like anything. It's this infinite regress because it's closed in on itself rather than this reciprocal, relational kind of way of knowing. And love. So that's what 1 Corinthians is saying. Knowledge puffs up, but love edifies. So the kind of knowledge that's rooted in love, nested in love, perhaps. And Pageau has a great video, I think, how science is nested in love, I think. Or science is nested in something. It's an old video. There's some, if you talk like nested, and this is very much an idea that I've had forever, Russian nesting dolls. Like those things are awesome because all these things, there's some ultimate thing which has to have a mysterious fecundity to it, a pregnancy to it that is beyond the either or of inside, outside, me, objective, subjective. There has to be something outside of that. And so, and TLC, I think this is a very medium is the message thing. And so like Nathan Ormond would say that we have this kind of language that is this group in speak. But if you think about it, everything is that way. Technical philosophy, academic technical philosophy is that way. You have to understand things in a very narrow way. But something that, at least from my superficial novice understanding of philosophy or the development of thought in Western thought or in anything, in the Bible, in theology, in any ology, in any study of any topic, people always have to reinvent words, because what happens is people get really used to a word. Like, be careful the words you use. You start out using them and then they start using you. You get into the scripted groupthink of this static definition, this one-to-one relationship of a word. Like this word is a sign, is a one-to-one sign, not a symbol, right? Because a symbol is pregnant with meaning, fecund, but a sign is a one-to-one. So this word means this, but that collapses in on itself and it never works. And so people often have to reinvent words all the time to make them alive again, to get out. This is why I've called the written word Socrates' Lament of the Written Word. And he said, it will make us forget. So Socrates said the written word would make us forget. And so Socrates there is playing with memory. And there's this great Samuel Johnson quote. And I know I'm throwing a lot of things at you. Sometimes I think there's this great Samuel Johnson quote. Sorry, pause that. Memory is the purveyor of reason. So memory sets the table. It's the purveyor of reason. Reason reason is a tool. It's an organ that plays in the imagination of your memory. Reason is powerless. You can't apply rationality to anything if you don't have memory. Memory is, I suppose, logically and practically, existentially, in reality, it is prior to reason. It has to be what you remember. And so that's why I love that Lewis quote of what you see and hear depends a lot upon when you're standing. It also depends upon the kind of person you are. Or PVK has been talking a lot about that study where, they say count the bouncing ball in the video that you watch, and all of a sudden the gorilla will walk by and you don't see the gorilla. And this is where it gets trippy for people, because attention dictates what you see. And so how do you know and control what you pay attention to? You can't, somewhat, because it's deeper than your conscious awareness gets at. I should have made a video. I was thinking about doing this. I should have made a video of Polanyi, because Michael Polanyi talks about this stuff all the time. He was a scientist who decided to leave science so that he could become a philosopher, because he saw the problems that were coming with science, a lot of this stuff. And he decided to, get at, he saw the dead end and the bankruptcy of scientism. And so he went into philosophy to try to save the scientific enterprise, which is a different thing than just pure scientism. So I know I have it saved on my phone, these Polanyi quotes, but he has these 3 modernist assumptions. Yeah, I got it. So here we go. Notes. Modernist assumptions of knowledge. All knowledge is focal. So it's like whatever you're focusing on, which is not true, because that doesn't include that brilliant Hegelian realization that Todd McGowan talks about all the time, that anytime you predicate anything or focus on anything, you're automatically including in that what you're not focusing on, the periphery. So like all vision entails focus and periphery. If you don't have both, you can't see. So that's why I have videos called like seeing is not seeing. So these modern assumptions of Polanyi, I know this is all esoteric, like just whatever, go back and re-listen to it sometimes. So like all knowledge is focal. So meaning it's exhaustively explicit versus tacit. He has a book called The Tacit Dimension, which is from that quote that I love, or that I talk about all the time. So all knowledge is focal versus tacit. You could consciously be aware of it, and that it's articulable is another one, and that that it's something that you can put into words. So these are some of his modernist assumptions. Oh yeah, and then he talks about, this is his broad theory, Polanyi's theory. All knowledge is subsidiary focal integration. So this is very in line with stuff that like Jordan Peterson is talking about. And there's a lot of great illustrations about it. You can apply anything, but it's like riding a bike. So you focus on something like a skill, dribbling a ball, trying to ride a bike. You focus on balance. And then once you learn that skill that you focused on, you integrate it, and it becomes a subsidiary of what you're focused on then. So it's in service of your attention, of what you're focusing on. So once you start to integrate these things, think of how many things do you have to integrate that you're focusing on to ride a bike? I don't know. It's like innumerable. It's more than you could probably even name. Or like learning a recipe or learning to play a piano. You do the scales over and over and over. There's millions of things, probably, if you really consciously articulated them out, all the things that you're learning in order to play piano, but then you integrate them. They become subsidiarily integrated. You build neural pathways that become subconscious, so you don't have to focus on them anymore. And then all of a sudden, then you can focus your attention down the road, and you can drive a car, or you can ride a bike, or you can make a meal while listening to podcasts, or you can, most of everything that human beings all do all the time, most of the knowledge that you have that you're applying daily to live your life, and praise God, is stuff that is not conscious to you. It's unconscious. You've embodied it. Breathing. Like people will talk about voluntary and involuntary nervous systems. Like most of what your body is doing all the time that's what your body is, arguably, is stuff that your body is the memory of your attention that you've incarnated and built. You've built a body around what your mind has been focused on and your habits over time. and that's become the memory of what you are. Your body is somewhat your past, while your attention and your focus, your mind and your imagination is playing into the future and into the past, into the eternal now, to integrate in new pathways into your being, into the fullness of your body. I mean, so all that to say, whatever, that's a lot. And I know sometimes I feel like it's one of my liked videos on my playlist, but sometimes I think about my mind is this way. I'm just going to circle back to Pageau and attention and what TLC is, but there's like Good Will Hunting is one of my favorite movies. And there's this scene at the end of Good Will Hunting. So there's, he's this genius blue collar worker who, like, for fun is solving math problems no one can solve at MIT or whatever. Right? I think it's MIT. And that's all interesting. And then Robin Williams, memory eternal. He's his psychologist, but he's doing all these math problems, and he has this math mentor as part of his I don't know, like they're trying to help him, but he has this math guy who he's doing all this advanced math with that few people in the world can do. And toward the end of the movie, he does this one proof and he writes it all down that this mathematician can't really figure out. And he, like, there's this part where he's just like, did you try McLaurin here or whatever? And he's like, yeah, I did. But he's just like, and he starts smoking, and he's like, and what's his name? The guy who plays the main character, who plays Will Hunting, whatever. I can't think of his name right now. But he gets really frustrated with this math teacher because he says, like, the math teacher's like, have you thought about it? And Will Hunting just says, just take it home. Just look at it. Just go over it a few times. It's right. It's right. Just trust me. It's right. And then the guy, they get into a fight, and he starts pushing him on stuff because he wants him to do math. And Will Hunting has no interest in doing math. And he looks at him and he's like, do you know how easy this shit is for me? It's a fucking joke. And he's just like, and then he, like, goes and he starts burning it. And the math teacher's like freaking out. I was like, no. And he blows on it to stop it from burning because he knows, like, because this is like his life's work. Like, he wants to figure this out. And he's like, there's few people in the world that could tell the difference between you and me and the math we can do, but I'm one of them. And it, like, makes me really sad that you're just throwing your life away to him. And Will Hunting's like, well, I don't want your life, essentially. And he says, like, have you considered maybe I don't want to sit around explaining shit to people my whole life? He's like, this is a joke. I don't care about this. This is a joke for me. Sometimes, and this goes all the way back to Pageau and, like, what PVK was saying in that video with Emily. He said, he'll go back and revisit old Pageau videos and he'll realize, oh, I've been changing along with Pageau, and stuff that he said before that just made no sense to me now makes sense, because what you see and hear depends a lot upon where you're standing. It also depends upon the kind of person you are. This is my big shtick with personalist knowing versus either or objective, definitional, mammonistic knowing. And this is why I kind of lean into my idiosyncratic, weird, made-up language versus the academic language of the philosophers, and I don't just repeat the stuff that they've already said, because that stuff, Socrates, the written word will make you forget. If I just repeat the things that other people have said, I'm using their words, not my words. And here's the thing, this is probably the key. I just realized it in saying all this. All of this, the little corner, Jordan Peterson, timestamp this, whatever. A lot of this started with his Bill C-16 thing and his stand on free speech. What did Jordan Peterson say? This is what I think is the peak of this whole spiritual phenomenon of TLC. I'm not using your words. I'm not using your words. That is like the condensation, supercoiled DNA spiritual statement of, like, that's his, like, Martin Luther moment. Here I stand, I can do no other, so help me God. Or any Maximus the Confessor when he was speaking the truth as he saw it. That's Jordan Peterson's speak the truth, the logos, participate in the logos, and let the cards fall where they may. Let go of your Machiavellian psychopathy, trying to control things through your language, and actually participate in the language, in the logos. Say the truth as you see it, and let the cards fall where they may. I think what this little corner is doing is learning to use their own words. And it's a place because we grew up in the siloed confessionalism of all these different churches and organizations or political groups. The Republican Party, the Democratic Party, the woke party, like anyone who's playing the game of the exclusivist religion of the right side of history, you have to say all these words. And if you don't say these words, you're out. You're out of the camp. Remember that quote, that Bill Clinton quote. The last remaining acceptable form of bigotry is against those with whom you disagree. That is the exclusivist religion of the right side of history. And what this little corner is a bunch of people outside of the confessional bounds of whatever, which allows people like Jews and biblical Unitarians and crazy people like me and Orthodox and Catholic and atheists and agnostics and post-Christians and ex-Christians, hopefully Hindus, hopefully Buddhists, hopefully Sikhi, all these different people, religious and irreligious, to talk about, to rediscover what it means to think. And actually, maybe through that process of participating in that spirit, you actually may learn what you actually believe. Because this is my big Peter Rollins thing, is like, people ask him all the time, what do you think? And he's like, I don't know what I think. That's another quote that I put in that Emily food truck video. You don't, human beings are this heaven and earth coincidence of opposites. And because of divided man, because we've poisoned our organ of perception and we've lied to ourselves, we often don't know what we really believe. Who is so integrated? Who is so Job-like? Who is so like the Theotokos that they are integrated enough, or Christ in their being, to know that they don't lie even to themselves completely, so that they can really honestly know what they believe about something. Okay, no false humility. I think I know those things better than most, and I know I don't have a clue. So people that think that they really know what they believe about things, I think are delusional. Because again, to quote Michael Polanyi, one of my favorite quotes, doubt and belief are ultimately equivalent. Doubt relies on a subterranean set of tacit belief in something else. Doubt is belief. It's just belief in not that. So like you have some cataphatic, which positive statement about belief. This is God. God is blah, 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 angry sky daddy who's mainly legal, punitive. He's an angry judge who's mad at you for breaking rules in the clouds, and then he has put some sort of punitive punishment on you until you've done enough penance to work off what's wrong about you, rather than a hospital and medicine, and that your punishment is also your transformation into who you are meant to be, into your true self. Like those are totally different things. So if you doubt this one version of God, tell me about the God you don't believe in. I probably don't believe in him either. Tell me about the Calvinism you don't believe in. I probably don't believe in it. All of that is getting beyond these transactional one-to-one despirited words that are meaningless, that all they've become is a game, a zero-sum game of deciding who's in and who's out. That game, I hope somebody's keeping track of this. And I hope that you understand. That's great. And I hope, well, again, here's the thing. This is the Pageau thing. It took how many years? And Pageau said this. He said that if I would have started talking about this stuff 15 years ago, nobody would have understood me. Owen Barfield somewhat said of his book, no one will understand this. Nobody in my time, very few people in my time will understand what I'm talking about. There are people, you might call them shamans or visionaries or prophets, who see things that the majority of people around them don't see, and they think are the crazy people. In the Eastern Church, that sometimes these people are called holy fools. That doesn't mean that just because somebody says something that seems crazy to you, doesn't mean they're crazy. Deep calls to deep. Sometimes someone is saying something that is so profound that there's nothing in you to apprehend what they're saying, because part of communication is mirroring. If you have no way to understand, like all of a sudden, you could start going to someone who speaks, like if I start talking to somebody who was speaking Chinese, and if I had no understanding of their language and I couldn't see their face, so there was nothing in me to relate to it, I don't understand it at all. That doesn't mean the Chinese person is crazy. It means I don't understand Chinese. If somebody's speaking about advanced particle physics and I don't have a background in those sciences, it doesn't mean that they're crazy or I'm crazy. It's just they're speaking a different language. Just because someone is using words that you don't understand doesn't mean they're crazy. It means you don't speak their language. So it takes participation, it takes time. Science is nested in love. All understanding is nested in love. This is why I say all meaning is personal. You don't get meaning without a person. And a person is it's not even an exhaustive set of relationships, but a person is a unity of a lot of relationships. This is why I talk about relational ontology. So let me try to wrap this up. So I think what the TLC is a place outside of confessional bounds that is learning through a reanimation of the spirit of logos in long form conversation where you can't easily either or people. We're learning to talk and rediscover what it means to think. Rediscover what maybe discover what we think. And I think that's a huge part of the addiction of that. I also all right. I'm gonna I've already been talking for 26 minutes. I'm gonna probably open it up here in a little bit and look at some of these comments. But so that's personalist knowing. The Rollins, even the Rollins thing, that comment about like I don't understand the Rollins fascination. I followed Peter Rollins for over 10 years. I've listened to a lot of his things. I've read parts of a lot of his books. I've listened to a lot of his podcasts. I've listened to him for a long time. I can point people to resources. There's particularly some podcasts that said this is a very good intro to Peter Rollins, because that's a common thing with Peter Rollins. People say like your work, like it's really hard to get into your work. It's really difficult to wrap your head around. Yes, that's because I think that's because he's on another level. He's saying things that people just don't even have the capacity to begin to understand. I'm going to close this out with my George MacDonald Lilith quote probably, but so that's also part of the big thing with. Let me try to find that quote. I need to have that just absolutely at the ready, but I never do. My Rilke quote, because I never know how much of it that I'm going to quote, but and so I never have it just locked and loaded. Oh, I'm going to find it. Okay. But that's Rollins' definition of and he's saying all this stuff because his whole thing is like to move the church beyond a confessional religion, confessional Christianity or whatever. And it's a lot of what his pyrotheology is like burn down all the old edifices because they're dead. They don't work anyhow. So he defines community as a group of people centered around a set of ideas, which is essentially confessionalism. It's or ideology, I think. And he describes communion as people that are gathered around around a mystery, around something that's an icon, fecund, something that has life in it. And so what are we doing? Oh, that's sweet. Thank you. Look at all this, all the love. That's Neil. All right, I'm gonna go back. So I'm gonna read the McDonald quote, and then I'm gonna go read comments, and then I'll open it up. Okay. I'm gonna just table the family discussion. It's something I've actually been talking to Chad about a little bit, and Chad's a great conversation with Ann on his channel. Check it out because it's fantastic. It's like it's a level up. It was so cool. I'm envious. I would love to do that. My wife has no interest in doing this. She's kind of like over my dead body. It's like that Charlton Heston quote of just like out of my cold dead hands, you'll take my guns. He was a big gun advocate. And, yeah, out of my cold dead hands will I participate in one of these conversations with you. All right, George MacDonald, and then I'll open this up. Okay. These are some great quotes from Lilith that I have in here too. Before I read the big quote, I'll read some of these other ones I have. Truth is all in all, and the truth of things lies at once hidden revealed in their seeming. Think about that for the rest of your life. The darkness knows neither the light nor itself. Only the light knows itself, and the darkness also. Baller. This one. Okay, this is the big one. I am sorry I cannot. So think about this in terms of Pageau and understanding and salience and attention. And attention is nested in love. What do you pay attention to? What you see in here depends a lot upon where you're standing and the kind of person you are. Why can't I understand Luke? Why can't I understand Pageau? Because you don't love him enough. You haven't loved him enough. You haven't invested enough time in him. That's true of anyone. Why can't I speak Chinese? I haven't loved Chinese people enough. I haven't spoken to enough Chinese people. I haven't been initiated into that world. Why can't I speak advanced particle physics? Because you don't love that world enough. You haven't invested in it enough, you know? There is no objective right controlled system of language like the rigorous kind of academic philosophical terms of definitional understandings that Nathan Ormond wants. Like that just doesn't work. All meaning is relative, but not arbitrary, to quote the great Jedediah Pascal. Okay, now I'm actually getting to the quote. George MacDonald. I'm sorry I cannot explain the thing to you, but there is no provision in you for understanding it. Not merely, therefore, is the phenomenon inexplicable to you, but the very nature of it is inapprehensible by you. Indeed, I but partially apprehend it myself. At the same time, you are constantly experiencing things which you not only do not, but cannot understand. You think you understand them, but your understanding of them is only your being used to them, and therefore not surprised by them. You accept them not because you understand them, but because you must accept them. There they are, and you have unavoidable relations with them, and they have unavoidable relations with you. The fact is, no man understands anything. When he knows that he does not understand, that is his first tottering step, not towards understanding, but towards the capacity of one day understanding, which is whatever, learned ignorance, becoming like a child, dying. Understanding is maybe a kenotic self-emptying of love and steel manning the other, agapeing the other's being into existence, which also is part of this is something I try to manifest in these live streams and kind of why I like setting it up this way where I just talk here, because this is all just me. This is just my crazy thoughts. But when other people come in, I have to change that dynamic. I can't just talk all the time. I have to be hospitable. I have to ask questions. I have to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, it's just a one-way street of me colonizing everyone with Luke thoughts. And I don't know everything. How could I know everything? You know, I have to have a hospitable, relational dynamic with all this. All right. I'm going to put this in and go read comments and table the family thing because it's too much. Yeah, I don't understand Lilith. I remember when I first read Lilith and I was just weeping. I had a post on my channel. I put a post, which is just a word post of books that have changed my consciousness. Because this is why I love Terrence Malick. Terrence Malick was a huge student of Heidegger. And Terrence Malick, people will ask, Malick doesn't really do interviews, but people ask him, like, what are your films are about? He doesn't like to play that game. His films are about changing the way you perceive reality. They're not about ideas. His movies are about changing the way you perceive reality. And Chad will know this from A Hidden Life. Like, A Hidden Life is all about this, man. All of his movies are about this. What up, bro?
Dude. Hey. Hi.
Hey, dude. I just want to give you love to your I haven't had the space to just gush over how much I love that conversation. And I know, Gavin, you've done some of those with your wife too, you know? I know even Ken Lowry has done conversations with his wife. I just think
You
that
crave these because you know your wife is amazing, and you want.
You crave these because you know your wife is amazing.
I really have no hope or belief at all that my wife will ever do this. I don't think she will. Like, she explicitly, emphatically, and passionately told me yesterday, like, I mean, essentially, like, I'd rather die you know, than do one of these things. But I think slowly, Chad and I have been talking a little bit in no recorded thing, and he was saying part of the difficulty with that. So I guess we're going there. I guess because I was just gushing over Anne.
Let's do it.
What's hard, but it totally applies, Chad. This is what's cool. What you see in here He's like, they have no idea what this is. Like that audio that you sent me the other day, because they haven't participated in it. They haven't loved it. This isn't just like trying to colonize people to all your opinions. A lot of online stuff is that, especially the text-based stuff, but this emerging TLC thing isn't that. Some people are trying to play that game, but they end up leaving because they realize you're not going to colonize people here.
What it is to them is a completely different thing. I kind of talked with Cassidy a little bit about this yesterday. It's more of like to them.
You're a little quiet, Chad.
Oh, shish kebabs. Continue.
So yeah, I love bringing in wives or people that we know personally, relationally, family in our local lives, because that's just like, I mean, that's like going Super Saiyan with Personalist knowing. Like that's like no bullshit.
Is this better?
You get it. You get
I'm
it.
with you, Luke.
Is this a better audio?
Not really, but that's all
You
right.
sound fine to me, Chad.
Oh,
There's people who have seen you without your mask on.
Yeah, Luke, get it together, bro.
Sorry, brother.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so here's the thing. Here's how I kind of understand. I've had to understand what my wife saw about what the YouTube is.
Right.
YouTube is it's a global, World Wide Web medium that is not an interactive two-way street.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like it's a thing where you watch cat videos, and things like that. So it's not really to them, at least to her. It's not like like a chat room, right? So it's like it's really weird. So they don't really understand. They're seeing something completely different, and so it's hard for them to really understand what it is unless they start playing with it. And I mean, that's like what it was when I first started doing this stuff. I remember when I first encountered YouTube, it was like it wasn't a personal thing at all. It was just like, oh, there's these music videos I get to watch, or
just
I can
consumption, just mammon, just content, just eat it up, gobble it up, but it's not a relationship, right?
Right. It was a one-way thing, and then once you decide to like step into the stream, so to speak, and it's like, oh, this is a totally different thing. Now I can't unsee it. You know what I mean?
Step into the stream, get under that golden shower.
Sicko.
You took that different? I just meant it's like a shower of gold.
Oh yeah. I thought you meant like pissing on somebody.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Every time we cross streams, I have an image of my brother and I as kids.
Every little boy.
Lightsaber battle or something.
Oh shit!
Universal male experience.
My bad. I shouldn't be talking about that. Sorry, Cassidy. My bad.
It's all good.
It's again how real discernment. How real do you get? In any room, the medium is the message. There's women in here. You talk. There's only so much penis talk you can get into.
Hey, Luke, I have a question. I had this question about the initiation. If you're not initiated, what did you say?
You can't. You never really know anything. Pageau spoke about this really well, but I think it's true, and it leans into all the Verbeke P's. Like until you're initiated in something, you can't really understand it. It's just like I speak English because I've been initiated in English. Like I don't speak Chinese. Right. I haven't been initiated in it.
So I was thinking about like the Tower of Babel. And as it relates to this initiation thing, like at a place where, so that was like all initiation or what? Like, like everybody had one language and like, I don't know, this is a weird thing. It's just a weird idea. I have this weird meandering things. I'm doing the thing that Fezzi likes to say that people do where they come in and start talking about stuff that has nothing to do with shit. Like applesauce.
I was going to say that the thing about like the interplay between if you produce some form of long form, whether that's a monologue you do, Luke, just like a stream of consciousness, or Cassidy has done like formed projects.
Yep.
I kind of something in between there. I don't know, but then So that's way different than social media, where it's basically like, my kid had a birthday, and here's my vacation, and I turned 25. Like.
And you hear all those horror stories of like what happened after they snapped that perfect picture.
I'm just saying that's a different expression, and it's a much shallower expression of your life. Whereas if you're talking about things that are meaningful to you, and you have this corpus that people can go explore, and so you can kind of get this idea of what's this person about, and then you can hop on here and just have like a conversation about some of those things. It's a different. It's different. It's mixing long form with kind of a social media, and nothing about Instagram and nothing about Facebook is really about long form.
Well, this is more like also kind of like almost like music. Like this is when I was growing up, I was obsessed about music and bands, and I would like research the bands, and then I would really research their lyrics, and I would like really and almost embody that poetry. And this to me is closer to that, only it's more explicit than that.
Right. And it's not just about ideas, although the ideas are there. This is where I really like what PVK has been saying so much more lately. He's been stressing the randos. He's been stressing the people. He's been saying it's about the people. You got to get to know the people, which has always been for me what's been cool about this, and why I've always been in the PVK corner of the corner, because it's really been different than Vervaeke and Pageau, who have explicitly said they're not trying to do community, really. I mean, Pageau or Vervaeke a little bit, but like Paul has said, like, I think I am. I think I'm trying to actually create community. I think that's what I'm doing. And it's almost, I put in the notes. So like these, I don't want to, so this isn't about shit talking, but like George Jonko, who was like on the Impulsive thing with like Logan Paul, but now he's doing his own show because he's more religious or like Christian. He had on I saw some clips of them, the Girls Gone Bible. I've just seen a couple clips of like these very, I don't know.
So hot.
They're so hot. They're just like, they're girls who they're definitely putting more effort into how they look than I am when I show up to these. And they had a conversation. There's like some clip. It's a short of talking about cussing, using language, and these girls just like go off and talking about it's just like a very Southern Baptist kind of deep South conversation of like teetotaling or cussing or whatever. And these girls are talking about language and what cussing has done bad and affected people. And George Ankles is like, I've really been convicted by what you guys say. I'm taking a vow right now just to not swear ever again. And I was just like, this clip is the epitome to me of the opposite of TLC. Like whatever they're doing.
I don't even know what a swear word is.
Because you're from Alabama.
But it's like, where I've seen words change to where they become swear words, right? It's like, how do you even track all these swear words?
Well, there's 7 of them you can't say on television.
That's a Carlin reference.
Yeah.
In which country?
You almost said one there, Cassidy.
TLC,
that's hilarious.
Swears. What are TLC swear words? What are words that are anathema in TLC?
Confession. This little corner.
There are things we don't talk about.
Like what?
Like
mind reading technology?
There you go.
Don't even get me started. I gotta go, guys. Bye.
See you, Chadrick.
We scared him off.
Here we go. This is the kind of confession I can get behind. I came into the space years ago and didn't care about the people very much. Thanks, Gavin.
It just came so naturally for me to not care about people, and so it's like I don't feel like I should be ashamed of it, but I've gone through some shame with it. But it's like this. I think a lot of people are doing it and don't even know they're doing it, because I've been there doing it and not knowing I'm doing it.
But I think that's why this is like an emerging thing. That's what Chad was going on. Like, this is new. I don't think that it's been because like we all to some degree know each other. Like how is that? How has this happened through technology ever before? It couldn't have happened through the telephone or the telegraph. It had to be somebody you already knew. It couldn't have happened through radio. I mean, kind of with radio, maybe you got to know people a little bit, but it was one way. And now like Twitter, you could kind of get to know people, but it was through the medium of the written word, which like I was saying before, it's despirited breath. But like this kind of thing, it's different. And it's not just about ideas. We talk about ideas, but it's so much more than that.
How many people feel like they know Joe Rogan or Dax Shepard? How many people feel like they know them? Because they sit and listen to them have conversation for 2-3 hours at a time. There's also a corpus of that. There's also overtime.
Yeah.
Viveki,
and I think so. That's the difference between when I was talking about other social medias with if they're your friends in real life, you went to high school with them or you went to college, like you have a subtext of context and you don't need necessarily. And I think at this space is like if you get out and you talk and you produce some content, somebody can kind of get to know your voice. They can get to know some things that you value through this corpus. That's more than just images. It's more than just text. Like you said, it's more about conversation. Yeah. And even if it's a one-way conversation, even what you were alluding to in the first part of your video, like this is me kind of like getting this stuff out here. And then but then there's this is the social aspect. Yeah. Of YouTube and its conversation and video. Where Twitter has spaces, but there's not video, and so I think it's unique in that and appeals in a certain way.
Yeah, I'm getting sick of it feels like we're all just the self-referential nature of this conversation. But I just want to use Gavin to maybe do a little pushback from the first part of your monologue, Luke. So Gavin's confession is I came into this space not caring about people. Mm-hmm. And I can see if Gavin had taken up the posture that I thought you were a little bit pushing in the beginning, it would be Gavin saying, I am the type of person that doesn't care, comes naturally to me to not care about people. And if you were to know me enough, you would just know that I don't care about people. But what Gavin did instead is participated and started caring about people. And I felt like the first part of your rant, I felt a little bit, it felt very Kanye to me. Kind of like, if you don't understand me, you're just not profound enough. You're just not thinking deeply enough. You're like, I'm like 10 years ahead of you. You'll catch up. I not get it, but your kids will, sort of thing. And it's like, no, and I think you also said this part, which is there's a giving of yourself to be part of something bigger, which I think is sort of the, what's the Vivekism that you sort of push back against? Shared cognition, distributed cognition. And I think that by definition requires you to sort of submit yourself to a bigger thing, which is the whole. And if you come into a team saying, I am me, and you have to learn to know me, to love me, and then that's the only way you can understand me, then that doesn't leave room for you to like give yourself to the team.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally true. I think it's all, I mean, getting to know anyone, it just depends on what their thing is. Cause like, I really like ideas. Like this is a struggle. It's not a struggle, but it's like I love this lyric, Clem Snide, to be blessed is to be cursed as well. And everything is a gift and a curse a little bit. So part of the way that I am, which is like borderline crazy, Kanye-ish, is my, whatever it is, upper 90s extroversion, enthusiasm, openness to ideas. That's just the way I'm wired. My wife isn't that way at all. And it's not even equated. I think in my youth, I falsely equated kind of this quick paced intuition with intelligence, which is totally egotistical because like, that's the way I'm wired. So like, this is what intelligence is the way that I'm wired. Like my wife's not that way, but she's brilliant just in her own ways. And part of, coming to have a relationship with anyone is to not insist on your own way. So while simultaneously, I think it is true that like you're not going to know me and understand me until you love me and spend time with me. That's true, but that's true for anyone. It's not just true for me. You know, I don't know. And then the whole like, I don't know, the self, like people talk. You mentioned this, Tayo, and self-referential things, and people talk about they get annoyed on by that. But like Chad said, this is true too. It depends on. Chad has been encouraging people, and I think that's valid. And I think, and you've done some of these, but like somebody that you're interested in talking to, reach out to them, have a topic. This is like what old school randos conversations were, and then have a conversation about a topic. But this is just kind of random, and I don't know. And we're also just talking about. I think we're figuring out what this is, and so we're talking about TLC a lot, which I don't know.
I mean,
Seems gross to some people, but doesn't bother me.
If the topic is thinking, it very quickly like gets to self TLC because we're thinking together. So that makes sense.
The question is what's relevant, and there's some things that are that I mean ought to be relevant to everyone. Like self-awareness would be a good skill that we can cultivate, and we all have different like skill levels. But we haven't heard Cassidy.
Sorry, I've got a somewhat whiny baby on my lap, so I don't know how helpful my contribution.
Some people come to listen to the whiny babies.
Yeah,
aren't we all?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I find it all interesting. I wouldn't say I'm a very online person, but I've somehow found myself in this online world, and it's changed my life.
Yeah.
So I kind of wrestle with that. I mean, for me, I've sort of been in and out of like, how much do I stay online and how much do I avoid it so that I can plant where I am. But there's also this weird in between where, I can't fully get rid of it because life is so online. And if I did, there's just a big gap where there's a lot of things that are much more difficult for me being where I am in my life if I didn't have at least some weird online support in this space. What's is it good? It's bad. I don't know. But like, there's this recognition in me that there's something about this little garden we've cultivated together here that's worth tending. Is that forever? Is it not? I don't know. But I wrestle a lot with that question of like, what is it? How do we do that well? How do we do that responsibly? How do we do that to cultivate a place where it's good for yourself, but it's also good for others also? Yeah.
I have two thoughts on that. I mean, having just graduated from having small children, my youngest just turned 7. Podcasting created an extreme amount of found time for people at work, people at home. But I think, and you can engage with that one way, but this is actually an opportunity because what's interesting about this space, and I know this is self-referential, so I'm sorry, but that it is public and that it is, recorded in a way. So there are some there's some game rules that are pretty helpful, I think, for creating a safe atmosphere in a certain context. And so I think that that's good.
I mean, it's interesting. I've been thinking a lot about like the history of YouTube, and what's funny is where YouTube started is very similar to what we see happening in the little corner, where it was a bunch of people in their bedrooms sharing their stories, sharing their lives, and accidentally falling into some sort of like following or recognition. And that's where the VidCons came, and you've seen how it's expanded and people have grown, and obviously YouTube has become more of a place where you have the potential to make it some sort of business. That makes it all tricky. And I think I'm caught in a middle space where I'm a trained filmmaker. So I love video and the art of media creation in all its different forms and understanding the function. But I also deeply, deeply love people and love community. And, you know, I've always found it interesting is the way that YouTube really gets you connected. I know, honey, gets you connected to people. And that's what's interesting about what we're doing here. But there's some trickiness, especially with the ideas that we're talking about, that opens us up to a lot more danger than if we were talking about, you know, food or fashion or a whole host of other things that are seemingly more superficial than sort of religion and spirituality and meaning. There's a lot of people who think being too open about those ideas is dangerous and it needs to be shut down, and certainly is dangerous. But I guess I'm not of the opinion that shutting it down is the helpful answer. I know.
Yeah, there's definitely some struggles here. So Emily says, Graham, I'm reading it for you. I was just thinking how much I wish I had this when I was at home with my babies. And this was a part of my big. So I tend to be. I want to talk about a couple things. I tend to be more of like a Luddite, or that's my natural tendency, which probably is ironic considering how much I do this, which gets into some struggles that my wife has with this. But I was home a lot, and I just wasn't having. And it's a lot of the listeners to PVK and in this world are people that have jobs that allow them to listen to a lot of online content. And it was a way I used to get on Twitter as a way of having more adult conversations because I was just with my kids all the time. Or like this is a way. My wife doesn't like to talk about these things, and I have kids. I mean, like my eldest son, I can talk about with some of this stuff, but in general, and this is where I feel like most alive and get most flow statey is where I'm doing just like my freewheeling intuitive thoughts. And so like this is a really great outlet for me, but then there are these struggles. So like my wife listed out the other day, I want to say these to people, like her problems with my whole participation in this world. So this is filtered through me, which me and my wife are so different that you always have to remember that. This is through a Luke filter. But so and I talked about with Chad with this. So this is like I came up with this word and Chad came up with this word. She said sometimes, she didn't say this. Chad said this, and I think it's true. Sometimes TLC can feel like an emotional affair or a mistress almost, where it's just like, do you love TLC or more than me or more than the family? Because she's like, this is where your head is all the time. Like this is what you're thinking about constantly. And which is connected to that. So there's point two, it's I'm not present. I'm not here. Like I miss practical things and the opportunity. And then she said, there's also an opportunity cost. What is the potential opportunity cost of being not so much here, like where my body is, but being in TLC land? Like, what am I not paying attention to here? Because I'm paying attention to like, what do you think about the TLC? And what did Anselman say about me? Because he says I don't like the Bible and stuff. That sort of stuff, like that gets inside my head. And then I'm not thinking about, like, oh, it's unseasonably warm in Minnesota. Maybe I should take the Christmas lights off my house, because I'm thinking about like an Anselman comment or something. And then the other part is the technological aspect of it. Like it's essentially like just give in, become Wally, plug into the matrix, like that's that aspect of it. And I don't know, like this has made me less of a Luddite because I care about a lot. Like I like this and I care about you people. So how much of this is helpful versus how much of it is an addiction and inhibiting me from doing other things, which is kind of always the bridge thing. Like this could be an unhealthy addiction.
I really like what you're saying, Luke. I think we have to think long and hard about that. Definitely people here that are married, but that could be true also with regards to other people's, whether or not this is taking time from your job or not. But I guess the question that one should ask his wife, or you'll ask Jen and I'll ask my Jen, what are we extracting out from here? Right? What are we thinking? Are we actually raising divine sparks? And this is in relation to what Chad said about the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
How, in Zephaniah, we see that eventually we're supposed to speak in pure speech, all of us together, right? Gentiles and Jews. And I'm sorry, but that's just my framing. And my sense is this is the best show in town with regards to attempting to reach pure speech. And there's multiple levels of that, whether it's like social or psychological or theological. But regardless, you have to plow through that, basically. And yes, I'm spending time over here, which right now, right? I'm having this conversation with you. I'm in the middle of emailing back a client. And in theory, I could also be going home sooner, right? Seeing my kids sooner. And that is something that I want to do. But I genuinely believe that my participation in this little corner for the last 2 years almost has benefited me, and ipso facto benefited my family as well. Am I more rounded? Do I look at the world differently? Can I appreciate more people that way? And hopefully I am slowly but surely, by embodiment and by consciously being aware of it, am helping and raising my kids and giving them a language that hopefully will be easier for them to start speaking in a sense, in a way that naturally is a pure speech, right? If your kids and my kids meet, but they're the form they converse and the way they converse in has already been shaped by conversations like these, I think that is time well spent.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's something. It's like all these tensions, like with my wife and I, for example. It has been my participation in this has been really hard and a struggle for us at times. Those conversations have been very difficult, but like therein is kind of the magic, the difficulty of transformation and learning how to love people. And I think it's also the importance of conflict, disagreeing, because like in your family, and it's even important in TLC, I would say, because like with your family, your wife, like we disagree over this thing. It's that constant conversation that any married person or anyone who's had any significant relationship, you could be with kids or with your parents or whatever. It's just like, well, I'm not feeling heard. Well, I'm not feeling heard. Like that conversation that you just have over and over and over that lasts for hours. Because essentially that's it. It's just like, I feel like I understand what you're saying, but like there's something about this that's giving value to me that is really hard for me to turn away from. And then, but at the same time, I can understand her points of like, if that, like Chad and I were saying this, he said like if his wife, if Anne told him like, you got to pick, like it's TLC or me. Like if I would hope, he said, I'm picking my wife. But like I would hope in the same way that my wife and she wouldn't do that. We've gotten to the point where she sees that, like what you were just saying, there's some divine sparks happening here and there's value being added. But like that's always a tension, and I need her pushing on me with that so that it's not, because it would be very easy for me to live here all the time in an unhealthy way. Because I am kind of an addict. I like this. I enjoy it. I could avoid paying attention here to things that require discipline and effort that in ways that I'm not gifted, that would be bad. And so I need her pushing on me in that. But like in those moments, I don't like it. I'm just like, just trust me, just, but like but I would probably go off the rails if she just like gave me free reign and never said like, I think you're spending too much time.
I want to comment one thing. There's that rough and tumble play idea. It's like with my wife and I make sure that I make sure that she sees the transformation, that I'm becoming a better husband. And like I'm, I can't allow her to win everything. I have to win some. And so I have to know what to stand up for and what's most important. Right. And so, like, for example, learning to love better turns out it's very good for a husband and a father to learn how to do. So it's so she's able to witness a transformation. And now she's kind of like, she's still going to call me out. Like this afternoon, she's like, we need to get away from our devices at 3:00 today. And I'm like, okay, I can get off at 3. We can get out and we can get away from our devices and be with the kids in the yard, right?
Totally.
And so we get good at communicating what we want, what we feel, and we don't try to just win everything.
Yeah. That's the magic, man, is that negotiation. So like I've learned I need to have healthy boundaries, because it's very easy for me to like have an ear pod in and be listening to a podcast or be interacting with people in voice memos or something like that. And then in an unhealthy way, living in TLC land. And so I need to put the boundaries on. Like right now, I'm alone, so I feel free to do this. But in a little bit, like I need to go and start doing other crap that my day needs. Even when I'm alone, I need to be doing other things, and I can listen into stuff here and there. But a hard line that's going to be for me is like when a family member is in my presence, whether it's in the car or whether I'm doing something around the house or whatever. If there's a family member around, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not going to be half in both worlds.
Well, is the idea not to be in both worlds? Rather, it's an integration, right? You just said, I want to bring the personal in here, right? Like I would love if Ben was on. So that's you bringing the personal into the TLC. But, if in one sense, it's like, you're, and, I'm guilty of this. I'm getting ready in the morning, getting the kids out of the house, but I hear like Jacob calling me a heretic and like in my ear in the other ear, right? Like he's on some sort of random just chatting. Now, how does one, right, disconnect from that? And like Gavin was mentioning, like my wife sees, or I make sure my wife sees these differences in me. And that's really the work, Luke, because like you just said, it's totally, it is very enticing to just be lost in this little corner. Mm-hmm. But the attitude is to have, and you've been doing, I think, a very good job about this, but having your sort of your 30-minute ramble, so to speak, but it sort of sets the stage and you want it to be more focused, right? I'm not here to just talk about the weather for 4 hours. And as this community grows, it's going to have to start at some sense, or let's say the OGs of this community, which I don't see myself as one, have to ask themselves at some point, either I'm creating more focused conversations or I'm being more aware of the fact of the embodiment that I'm doing from these conversations and how I'm extracting things from here. And then you're really using TLC as a corner. And that doesn't mean you can't still participate over here as a community. And I think it's fair to say, what's the difference between me getting some drinks with friends down the street in a bar and to me hanging out here for 2 hours? And I think for some people that are not involved, it's hard for them to think like actually conversing for 2 hours. It just sounds like basically if you're on for 2 hours, you're either watching a movie or like doing porn. Like what else are you doing on there for hours? And that is like you just said, having your wife be included, right? Or having our spouses be included, or our family members be included, allows them then to participate and see what this is like. But it is a dance. I don't think there's an answer for that yet. I think it really needs to. It's a rope walk. You have to really see how much time you're spending in here and how much of it you're extracting outside.
You've seen all the I'm quitting YouTube this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was a big hit on New Year's. Well, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about boundaries. We're talking about health. We're talking about how much your space, how much of your life you're putting into this, and these people that gave themselves to this basically completely like are spent. And I would assume that they weren't having conversations that much with people that were challenging them on that. Probably, it's once you get that much status. And I think also at the same time, the new Apple VR, AR, or AR goggles just released, I think. And you know how, there were smartphones, but then the iPhone came out. And everyone's been trying to catch up ever since. Well, there were our AR goggles, but now Apple's released theirs, and I think it's gonna suck. I mean, if we think this is the Matrix, I mean, at some point, like trying to have these in a 3D space, and like, how much more are we gonna want to get into the Matrix that way? And so having these conversations is kind of about boundaries and relationships, engaging with this as opposed to, hey, I'm 18 years old and somebody gave me this goggles and no one's, here we are 20 years later after social media having this, it was invented having these conversations about boundaries, where the market's not going to have that conversation with you.
I think we always have to just put the good, not letting like perfection become the idol that we chase, in overlooking like the goods that are available to us. And I think there's some things we always have to keep in mind. Like I spoke to somebody on the phone who's they had a rando talk with Paul, but they've been more of a lurker. They don't have their own channel or whatever. And he was like asking me like, what's going on with like these TLC conversations and all these self-referential things. And I think, and I said, and my take on it, and this is, I haven't been here as long as like Luke, but I watched like a bunch of those, early talks on Randos United and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, I think, well, a lot of people seem to have like real problems, idea problems, thinky talky problems. But as they started talking with other people, like your problems, you may not resolve all those things, but because now you're in a community with other people that care about you, like you found the thing that you really needed. So, I mean, but then at the same time, it's like you still need to have like topics or something, or else it's just going to become too self-referential. And I think that's kind of the evangelistic aspect. You're not necessarily to the sense of just that it has to be like about the gospel or something like that, but you need to like have things where you can still invite new people in. Like, because when new people can't come in, then it's the Tower of Babel, or it's headed in that direction. If you have to be speaking all the same language and all the same words in order to participate, that's the Tower of Babel. And so I think, and the good things, like, I've had the balance of trying to understand concepts of things that I understand here that maybe are helpful for me. And then I have to translate it to, like, if I want to talk to my wife about it, or if I want to talk to kids in our church about stuff, because it's like, I can't just say, okay, we need to learn about combinatorial explosion. Like, I have to figure out a new way to say it. And it was actually interesting because I was thinking about like, are these conversations cosmic or are they mundane? And the interesting thing is that that's the same word. Cosmos is is Greek, and mundus is Latin for the same thing. And it's like, how, and then you bring it into English, and then you say, well, what is that referring to? The world or the universe or something. And so then even there you have two different words. And because I think that the process of making new words and translating ideas and new things, like that's like like our knowledge and our understanding is like a tree. It's got to grow. The roots have to go down, but the branches have to go out too, and we have to like reach out towards other people. And it's always going to be like a messy thing, like, because I think that's the thing, because we would like to have like a neat package, a worldview that like accounts for everything and everything makes sense, and we have all the right terms and we're all understanding the same thing. That's never going to happen.
Right.
So I think that we really just have to see that striving to reach a place of understanding with other people, like that is the work in and of itself. And what you get from that is community and relationships and a greater love for people. Because that's right. The thing. We find people on here because we can search for stuff and be like, oh, finally I found somebody who likes the same weird thing I like.
Right.
But you don't just love, and like, yes, whatever Lewis talks about with like his first friend who liked, Norse mythology or whatever. It's like, finally I found somebody who likes this. but then your relationship then becomes about you and the other person. Like, but you need the inroad.
Yeah. Tayo, did you see this? Do you think language is a barrier at speaker's corner?
In what context? As in the in-group language, or?
I'm guessing that's what he's saying, in group language. Because that to me feels like the spirit, and maybe this isn't what Phlebas means, but to me that feels like the spirit of a lot of kind of like Christian apologetics versus new atheists, or atheists versus Christian apologetics. It's just like what it feels like to me. I like to riff on the 1 Corinthians 13. Love does not insist on its own way. There's a way, and this is related to what Michael was saying, in conversations that you can insist on your own way. Use my words, use my language, use my terms, speak in the way that I want you to speak, or else you're outside, you're cast out. Or you can, self-emptyingly give up insisting on your own way and try to understand what the other person is saying. Try to use their language. Try to steelman them. I think it's a conversational hospitality. I mean, I don't know if that's what he's
No,
meaning,
I think if that is what he's referring to, then that's completely right, because it almost feels like there's a script in both side of the debate want their script to be followed, because that they've got a strategy to win if their script is what the conversation is based around. So an instance in apologetic language, and what definitions you want to push, and if you can push your definition and get other side to agree to it, then you sort of dictate the terms of conversation. So yeah, in that sense, yeah, language is a barrier to good fruitful conversation at Speaker's Corner for sure. Luke's disappeared. Real life calls.
Yeah, it happens.
Anyone read this book? Is that backwards to y'all?
It's not backwards, but the logo is kind of covering it up a little bit.
Right.
The other way. There you go. The Giveness of Things, Essays, Marilyn Robinson.
No.
Yeah. She's a...
I might call that.
No, go for it.
I hear also something that Luke was saying about, like, I could force someone to speak, using my jargon or my terminology. When I mentioned pure speech before, the continuation of that verse is in one accord. And the Hebrew translation is shechem echad, which really means as one unit, speaking sort of on one set of shoulders. So the pure speech doesn't necessarily mean that you're using the same exact language. Rather, the intentionality and the fact that you're doing so together is what matters, right? So it's less about, like, in the speaker's corner, so to speak. The attitude would be there could be a disagreement between, let's say, me and the Muslim. However, are we trying both to seek truth and do so together, or are we opposing each other? And only once it's in one accord, as if you could imagine all of us carrying the weight together on our shoulders, then there might be differences in the exact terminology, but we know that our point of orientation is the same. So it's less about the jargon and more about the intentionality.
Seeking understanding versus trying to win an argument.
Yeah, I think
are you trying to push people through a door, or are you just holding it open and saying, here's a door you can walk through?
Yes. And not just as a door you can walk through, but the door you're currently standing behind it is, I'm gonna set on fire so that it's inhospitable for you to stay where you are, and the only escape is coming to my door. Sorry, Cassidy.
So I want to talk about this comment because Mitch is a guy that I know who's like, he's friends with me and Jason. We have conversation with him, and he's always, the way that he thinks is usually opposed. So it's a lot of iron sharpening iron unless you just leave the way. So he says, to steelman the script givers and the inhospitable conversationalists, so maybe the ones who insist on their own way in conversations, it's possible that they have just found that the way they are putting it has the best pragmatic outcomes.
Might is right.
Yeah.
Disagree.
I mean, depending for whom, maybe for whom. And that's like a lot of, I mean, that's like a little bit, that's like
Nobody's
a Sam
perfect,
Harris.
though. Nobody's
like
perfect.
Huh?
Nobody's perfect.
Right, but it's kind of a Sam Harris human flourishing thing, or like the Enlightenment rationalists that are just like, well, these are the things that obviously work toward the best human flourishing. how do you know? Or it can be a little bit of like the good fruit argument. You know, you'll
Well-
know a tree by its fruit, and the fruit is obviously from the people who say the things that I say.
Well, you know, it's funny because like I'll have to for work. I'll have somebody call me on the phone, and they're trying to fix something in a house, and I'll have to figure out like how do I tell them over the phone what to fix. So then I'll have to like think of descriptions of maybe something has a name, but if they don't know what the name of the thing is, I'll have to describe it to them, and then they can figure out what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And we can figure it out. And then like I don't necessarily expect that they will do it exactly the way I do it, but they'll get the gist of it.
Right. The spirit of
However,
it, maybe, not the law.
However, I don't want, like, if I'm getting surgery, I don't want the surgeon getting the gist of what's wrong, you know? Like, so I want technicality and precision, you know? So, I mean,
you still want the spirit, Michael. The spirit is that they're trying to love you and they're not trying to pay off their mortgage.
You know what, though?
You want care.
Have you heard, you got to hear these stories about, like, people, like, before you go into surgery, like, take a Sharpie and write, like, which arm has the problem or whatever, because they, you know,
This happened to my grandmother. She had the wrong leg operated on and died. So.
Right. Or you hear like Dr. Death, the back surgeon, who's just like faking everything and wrecking people all over, killing people all over the place.
That's how I got castrated.
Huh?
What? I'm just kidding.
That's like the joke. It's just like, what's that movie from? Like, I was over circumcised. And you're just like, what?
Yeah.
Like, no, it's just shit I made up to make you laugh.
Anyway, hey, I got this really weird thing that I just have to say it really quick before I go, because this was crazy. I had this revelation that, like, is this what you were saying? Like, over in Speaker's Corner, the atheists and the apologetics dudes, they are actually a group together, and they actually share a common language. And they have an in-group common language.
Yeah, because their idea of God is the same.
Oh, so weird. That makes perfect sense. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Bye. I'll go find my penis.
So I do want to, two things. I want to steal man. This is basically like an Alexander Schmemann quote about Christ being home everywhere, which interestingly, I think is a book that Jordan Hall read. There's this really famous, I haven't read it yet, I have it, Schmemann book, which is, who's like a very beloved American Orthodoxy guy. But what's the name For the Love of the World? Is that the name of the book? I'm blanking on it right now, but there's a Schmemann quote that's almost like this: "Is Christ was home everywhere. Christ had no home because he was home everywhere he went." I just thought that was amazing that you basically just said the same thing. But to Steelman Mitch, sorry, Mitch, I'm not Steelmanning you. This is where I'm not judging. I don't judge the intentions of the people who, how did you say it? Or like Anselman, for example, who is not a fan of me. Clearly in the comments. If you read the comments, it's just like,
it's a Stillman Anselman. He loves you so much that he would like to share the most precious thing with you.
Yeah, he wants, Anselman is striving to be faithful to the scriptures, faithful to church tradition.
He has a particular
understanding of church tradition, which is the right one, which is the Anglo-Catholic one.
I don't even know if that's it. Look, I think he has tasted something better than anything else, and he's just trying to share the thing that he's tasted.
Yes. So like that is, I agree. That's the intentions of, I think, any sort of identitarian kind of ideological colonist, I think, is the positive aspect of them, because I don't think they're just like, I don't think they have bad intentions, but this is why I say all the time, like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You can have good intentions and be deceived. So like the problem is that just because it worked for you and for a subset of people, you then project what's the word? You project that out and universalize it.
Huh? You're getting away from the Stillman of Mitch, and there is a difference between really trying to love them and stillman them and trying to correct them where their mistakes they're making.
It's not even trying to correct. This is like, even with my conservative, my YouTube video that I put out to conservatives. It's not even saying like you can't be that way. I'm not trying to make you into me. It's just don't demand that I'm like you. Like that's a different thing. It's like the difference between positive and negative rights. It's one thing to say like to say leave me alone. Like don't insist that I'm like you. And it's another thing to say like you must be like me. Those are two very different things.
And it's interesting that we can perceive something that maybe isn't there in the other, but we perceive it, or we interpret it, and so we're all kind of doing that.
Yeah, what I think is interesting is that both of the things that Luke just touched on and the idea of steel banning were incepted into us by Proposition C16 and by who's the Weinstein that mentioned Steelman at the Pangburn conference with Peterson and Harris. Like both of those ideas that are like about 6, at least for me, are like 6 years old inside from this little corner. That I have like the ability to use. And the idea of steel manning, like that was like a flash pan kind of like, genius moment. And it was a tangible thing, not just to have good faith, but it's a step beyond good faith. It's like, can I understand where this person I don't agree with is coming from? And can I give their argument its due? And I think those are the types of things that have been modeled through this world of podcasting and long form dialogue. Like we are fruit of that. This conversation, like it's built. Those two ideas are built on things that we probably heard within the last 5 to 6 years.
So I want to treat this comment. So Anselman, you said PVK's winsomeness was and is with a view to helping people to Christ. Luke comes across as opposing specifically Christian talk. So this is the way that I would say it. It's not that. Like I have opinions, some, about what I think are the right Christian theological doctrinal positions. I tend to think they align most with Christian orthodoxy, although I don't know about the Chalcedon piece. Like which way do I stand? Which place do I stand on? Like, and like I don't want to get caught up in all the lingo of like Miaphysitism versus diphysitism and those. Like I don't know what I think about those things, but I do have opinions about some of that stuff. Other people have we have Chezi in here, who's Jewish. So if I say you have, if I am constantly trying to convert Chezi to my specific strain of Christian intellectual articulation of the way that I understand God, and he's trying to do the inverse, like we're not going anywhere. We're doing the Christian atheist apologetics debating. That conversation is going nowhere. If I'm trying to constantly convert Sam to Christian, I believe in Christian Trinitarianism. I believe in it. But if I'm constantly trying to convert Sam, you're not loving each other. It's going nowhere. You're just trying to convert.
You can say, thank you, Anselman, for sharing your perspective. So he's telling you how you come across. It's like, that's huge. He just told you how he perceives you. Like you can just start with that. It's like, thank you, Anselman.
No, I agree. But like, I don't come across that way to everyone.
There's a defensiveness, Luke. There's a defensiveness.
Well,
well done, Gavin.
I'm just saying, like, I mean, I do. This happens with my wife and my children. It happens all the time. There's a defensiveness and sometimes you have to let someone else win. And sometimes, if you really want to stand on that one, like I heard you the other day say that the confessionalism is your drum. That's the one you've chosen, this drum and this hill and everything.
It's the intellectual position that I most adamantly oppose to. Yeah.
So you're getting poked right in the thing that you're upholding. So the one I'm trying to uphold is I say, I know that I don't love God with all my heart. I'm working on that, and I know I don't love my neighbor as myself as good as I can. So those are the two I'm upholding, right?
But those are
all
good.
These other things.
Those are self-focused things. You're trying to take the log out of your own eye.
Yes.
Anselman's trying to take the speck out of mine.
And you're trying to take the log out of his.
No, I mean, this is where I'm trying to make an intellectual point. Anselman can keep saying this all the time. Like, I'm not trying to get rid of Anselman. I don't think we should excommunicate him. I don't think he shouldn't be here saying whatever he wants to say. I'm just saying he's very focused on me. I'm not initiating this.
I think that that comment was more in line with your averseness towards Christian YouTube and the posture that takes, and that is true. You do have you're not a fan of the way Christian YouTube and apologetics YouTube is done. I think the that's just who you are, and he accepts that about you. And he's just pointing it out. And I think what Gavin was saying is like, you saying no, as to I'm like this, it's more of a defensive posture. But I think just to still man, the Speaker's Corner apologists and the Muslims, it's very similar to what Michael said about surgery. They're talking about the most important things to them, from the Muslim side of things and from the Christian side of things. And the atheists are mostly there to troll the religious people and have good arguments. But from the religious side, this is the most important thing, and I need to find the best way that I can say it. A lot of them might even be new to the faith and just have this fire in their belly that they need to help other people see the light that they've now seen. And I think with that, yes, you don't just want to ramble on and on at people. You want to have your structured, propositional things in check. I think doing that to the exclusion of making a friend of someone you disagree with, I think that's the spirit that this little corner is sort of cultivating, the garden that Cassidy speaks about. That I think some of those soil can be transferred to different spaces, which is what we're all trying to do, either family, real life, and all those sort of things.
I like the idea of a garden because it has to be tended with care. And care is a value. Someone mentioned hospitality is a value. In Pageau's speech at ARC, he talks about humanity being defined in different terms than what we've kind of tried to do in the last 100, 200 years, about care and attention being more primary than what we're made out of, like physically. And so, I mean, I think that's a piece of it. And the propositional argument stuff, that had its place to still man it, because we didn't have anything else to talk back at the new atheism for 10 or 15 years until Jordan Peterson changed the game. And so, they were the stopgaps for that season. I mean, because what else? You just don't say anything, maybe,
I know the religious questions are interesting because we're all trying to help each other, right? Like the most adamant apologist on whatever side is just trying to help the other escape some delusion, right? And like Luke says, the best intentions, can sometimes lead to hell. But like something when I was becoming Orthodox, before I was officially, am I hearing echoing?
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I don't know why.
Okay, hold on. It might be me. Hold on.
I think it was me. I was muting myself, but
While
yeah.
we wait for Cassidy, I definitely don't think that I never felt at all that. I mean, I think he'd be very happy if I found Jesus, so to speak. But that's never that's never the vibe I get from him. That's not the vibe I get from anyone I'm talking to over here. I never feel that kind of pressure. I really feel like we're all exploring and the divine and trying to get closer to it. And in a certain sense, definitely at this stage, it's almost not required. I understand that, let's say in Jacob's Discord, there's more of that fiery conversation. But when Mitch comments and says pure speech is Jesus, right? So I disagree with that, but I I appreciate the comment and I could resonate with its essence. And for me, that's a win. As far as like where we are as a society, where we are as a people, as far as we are as religious folk, to me, that's moving forward, right? When I look at our tensions with Islam, who ever thought that Jews and Christians could ever be in a space like this 500 years ago, 100 years ago, even? And yet we are. And that's why it gives me a tremendous amount of hope, because this is a model. So hopefully it could be reenacted again with our Muslim brothers. So I'm never feeling sort of that kind of pressure. And when I hear Luke speak and I see Anselman comment, I see that Anselman is taking like an offense to, like Gavin was saying, how he perceives Luke is speaking about Christianity or his religion. But I don't see necessarily Luke as attacking. I see really Luke as being curious and exploring. Sorry, Cassidy, if you're back, it's all yours.
No, it's okay. My fault. I dropped out. Well, I was just going to say, when I was becoming Orthodox, I was talking with Shelley, who was also becoming Orthodox. We were on similar paths in some ways, and her priest had given her really good advice that I've carried on in my own life, in the sense that our job as like catechumens in the Orthodox Church was not to convince others of orthodoxy; it was to become Orthodox. And I think that if we all took that position in whatever we believe, if like our job is not primarily to convince other people, but to become that ourselves and let that speak for itself, we have a much better idea of what this thing we claim to believe actually is. And I think that's what the TLC gives space for, is to work out how to become the thing that you think you believe. Or at least like that's what we hope it is.
I think it's a struggle. It's like this comes up all the time. It's kind of like, can you be to not insist on your own way, and like Kezi, I think you do a brilliant job at that. Like if you're, Mitch will say something like all truth is Jesus. Obviously, you're not going to agree with that, but like you're trying to save the appearances, not hold on to that, see through to the essence of it, and get at what you're trying to have that resonate with something in you that feels honest and truthful, where you can just be like, I know what you mean in my own language, which is a very charitable thing to do. But if you just got stuck at the place of just like, I don't agree with that, and here's why, and you're just stuck in that debate mode of argumentation, like the conversation will go nowhere. It's a zero-sum, either or winning game. And Cassidy, to your point, like I agree. Like I have what I'm trying to. This is the Jordan Peterson act as if, and what you actually do and how you act is what you truly believe. So, or Rilke, the point is to live everything. What I'm actually doing in my life is what I believe. I'm pursuing orthodoxy. But I'm not going to tell everybody else they need to become orthodox. I don't know what they need. Like there's a different thing. Like even Anselman, like the only thing I want you to do is to like probably, if I don't want to do all the things that you're prescribing for me, can you just leave me alone? Like, I don't think that's bad of me to say, just leave me alone if I don't want to use all your words and do all the things you want me to do. Is that true tolerance? Like, I understand what you're trying to say. Like, tolerance can become intolerance, or we're just tolerant of all the people that we want to be tolerant to. I'm trying to be truly tolerant, but I'm just asking of that in return.
Just want to quickly say to Ezzy how much I appreciate the tone in which you speak about the Muslim brothers.
Amen.
Mainly because I hear a lot of Americans talk about the lack of tension between Christian and Muslim, and I'm often like, you guys have no idea because you don't have an influx of Muslims. Now, I've got Muslim friends, and but there's I feel a naivety with the way Americans talk about that, and I can't say that to you because you are literally at the throat of it. So that sort of shames me a little bit, and helps me to be more loving. And just quickly towards the tolerance point, Luke, I think instinctively I feel to say no. You can't just say leave me alone. That doesn't feel like the right thing to do. But I think at some point there is. But also, it's important to the medium and the power that you hold as the person on screen and the person that's speaking, and versus the power that someone that's just leaving a comment has. Ansuman, from my knowledge, hasn't ever been on screen. He's just a notorious commenter, and that's it's a different thing. Is using words he asks you because that's the only way you can get there. Like you don't know, you don't have that personal, don't know how you put it, a personal knowing of Ansuman is. And if you did, I'm sure you'd just be like, that's Ansuman being Ansuman. For example, if I encountered Jacob on like or just a text chat, I probably wouldn't be able to stand him. But I love that brother. I've met him, so there's a different sort of knowing. So I think it's important to remember the medium in which we're engaging.
Yeah. No, I think it's totally true. I guess one way that I could equate it is like with my kids. Like I can tell my kids things that I want them to do in a way that I think is right to live in the world, and then like they maybe don't do it, and then I can correct them, and they maybe don't do it, and I correct them. Like eventually, like I can't force them to follow my prescriptions for their life. I actually don't think God does that with us either. And so like at some point you have to woo more than you have to coerce. Like, and especially among peers, like when you're having a conversation with peers among ideas, if somebody just disagrees with you and they don't want to use your words or affirm whatever you want them to affirm, you can be upset with that all day long. But like that's the whole Jordan Peterson thing of just like, you want me to use these words, I'm not going to use those words. I'm just not going to do it.
I think the thing is too that if it's Luke, you're talking about a pattern of behavior, and I mean I've been engaged in these enough to maybe I guess to see that is that a pattern, and if Luke's the one that's saying, hey, I'm going live, my question is Anselman coming on if he knows that he's already going to disagree with Luke about 98% of things or whatever the number is? What's the purpose of the pattern? I don't know, but it's not just about is this an open space, but then there becomes like I think it is an open space, but then if it's like, well, this is something that's like on a wheel over here, that might sometimes maybe that has to be addressed in a certain way. I thought this was a microphone. Maybe it's not.
Can't hear you, Hezzy. I see your mouth moving.
Maybe it's up here.
You're still silent, Hezzy.
I was going to just mention, like, if you are born into a religion, and it's like, and I believe if you can be born into a religion and you can seek that personal relationship with God, and you'll find yourself like going, like progressing and growing and transforming. Like I don't, like, I'm not too concerned about the names of the religions and the propositions. I'm more concerned about that personal relationship. And then I have faith that it will lead the person in the right direction if they're trying to do that, if they're really trying to listen to God. So I see people trying to uphold their propositions and whatnot. And it's like, so many people are born out of different vaginas. It's like, it's like, you gotta be able to, I mean, ultimately for all the people, like you have to be seeking to have a relationship with God, the creator. Like,
right.
It's like, yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if we want to go down this whole path. I mean, this is like a whole different swing and conversation, but I want to acknowledge it, I guess. So physicalist, atheist here. How do you distinguish between what is real and what is imaginary? Well, I would say that as a physicalist, atheist, you're saying what is real is what is material exclusively. And everything else, like consciousness itself, names, language, all of that is just like an emergent property. So on your frame, seems like to me, I would say that all of this, all the words that we're using are not real. But then my problem with physicalism is it just devolves into absurdism. Like C.S. Lewis says, it's just like shaking a pop and the effervescence comes off. The solid you know, the liquid turns into a gas, but it's nothing. It's just meaningless. It's just this is why the French, like in the 19th century, the French absurdists just put on the theater of the absurd, where they just went up on stage and just babbled, because they were trying to make the point of like there is no meaning. But what's ironic is like they can't escape their body, so they're on stage and they're making sounds. Like you can't fully escape meaning because of the grace of having a body. Like there's hierarchies that are happening there. Like that's why Pageau has been so valuable. He's like saying there's meaning and structure everywhere with those that have eyes to see. Like you'll see it at a dinner table or in a conversation talking to someone. Like there's a ritual there that allows for things to not be absurd. He's like, all of a sudden, if you're having a conversation with someone and you just lie down face down on the ground and keep talking to them, they'll say like, this is weird. Okay.
I
Well, I don't know. Again, like this is, please answer the question instead of ad hominem.
Here's my answer to that question is that the presupposition in the question is that what is imaginable isn't real. And so, I mean, I would say even as a physicalist, you'd have to say that there are some kind of neurons snapping in your brain to create the imaginary. And so there's something real there. So, and I think there's a language issue also with imaginary, because to go ahead and say for the presupposition that imaginary isn't reality, doesn't have reality, then that's a space that you'll never be able to pass. If it's, oh well, that's God is just imaginary, fairies are just imaginary, imagination is just imaginary, meaning for symbols is just imaginary. You're saying that those things, but that some of those things can't be real or aren't real in the presupposition of the question.
I would say, like, just to think to have a little imagination moment, like those, let's say you take something like those Apple VR goggles, strap that onto somebody or whatever. And obviously these things will only get more advanced in the future. And then you put them through like 2,000 hours worth of torture or something, and then you take them off and say, don't worry, it was just imaginary, it didn't happen. Like, what comfort is that going to be? Like, I mean, I don't know, we're not just physical people, we're not just animals. Our imagination and our ability to think about what we can't, choices and what would have happened if we did things differently and how we can do things different in the future, that's all important stuff about being a human being. So
yeah. So T. Grogan, I'll just say I don't want to continue down this path here, just because it would be it's its own complete conversation. However, in the spirit of TLC and this whole thing, I would love for you to connect with you somehow and have like a randos conversation about whatever topic you want to with people. There's a lot of people who were atheists who, like my friend Cal was an atheist for a long time, grew up Hare Krishna, was an atheist, and now is Christian. He does a really good job at steel manning atheist positions. I think he's really great at that kind of thing. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you. But I think also, like, yeah, trying to interact merely through text is really difficult, because like you said at one point, yeah, like that's not what I'm saying, I'm steel manning you. Well, I would love for you to be on here and correct me in real time if I'm steel manning. So, and Hezi, did you get your mic fixed? No. He's saying, come on though. You're welcoming T. Grogan on. Come on in. The water's fine.
What's your picture, T. Grogan? What's that? Is that like an atomic particle? What does that mean? What does your image mean?
Are those subatomic particles?
Yeah, but there's letters on them.
I can tell you the danger, like from an atheist perspective, the thing that always, it comes down to like trust in God, right? Like how much are you like trying to control yourself and how much are you trusting God to do? Like, I think an atheist perspective, or the perspective I had when I was trying to control a lot more, is that, I hesitate to trust people and God, right? And so, and then you look around, you see all these people that just have so much faith and trust, and obviously that can go wrong. all of a sudden you're killing witches, right? There's all kinds of things that can go wrong with that. And so the question is getting at this capacity to know when are we doing God's will and when are we doing our own will. And it's like, it's a good question for religious folks who believe in God, for believers. And I think like that's how I would still man an atheist. It's like they have something important to bring that we need to pay attention to. Are we really doing God's will or our own will?
Totally. One of the guys I'm constantly harping on is Peter Rollins, who's one of his whole thing is pyrotheology. Burn it down. He's a post-structuralist. I don't know. Most people wouldn't even. A lot of people wouldn't call him a Christian. Definitely traditional kind of evangelicals wouldn't call him a Christian. But one of his big projects he did forever and still does is Atheism for Lent, which is just fantastic. I mean, there's a lot to learn from atheists. Absolutely.
I thought I heard Hezi that time. We don't hear you again.
I would be interested for T. Krogan, like what is in your what's the story that makes you be a physicalist? What's that story?
I think the dude took off, so he said have to catch you later, but like it really is like that's why I love the salience thing and where I started and what you see and hear. It's like the bouncing ball and then you don't see the walking gorilla behind the ball. If you're just looking on counting how many times the ball bounces, you literally, and I think that's the appropriate term, don't see a Christian, don't see the ball.
I mean, a lot of atheists like logic and reason and will not like paradox and will not like contradiction. That's some of the ones I've known, and I've been there. But now it's like I can kind of embrace a contradiction and a paradox. Like that's a hard move.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, I'm probably going to be. So T. Grogan answered like, "What's the story? The success of science," he says. So, leave it at that. You can infinitely go into things. What is success? Huh?
What is success? What is science?
Yeah, absolutely.
Science didn't bring me a wife and kids. That's what I consider having success, or one aspect of it. So,
I love that Firas Zahabi. It's like over an hour debate with Joe Rogan on what is science. Like it's essentially like they go down that whole path philosophically really well. And Firas Zahabi is Muslim, so I mean there you go. He's fantastic in that. I think he's just it would be so interesting because it's very like what I was talking about earlier in this thing of PVK saying, a few years ago he couldn't understand Pageau, and he goes back and watches old videos and now he understands it because he's been initiated into Pageau. He's loved Pageau into being, and now he can understand what he's talking about. I almost think if Rogan went back and listened to that Firas Zahabi clip again, I think he'd get what Firas was getting at. But I just think Rogan had no capacity to understand what he was talking about at the time. He just didn't. There was nothing in him to understand it. That's that McDonald Lilith quote. All right. Any final words?
Yeah,
guys?
I'm gonna plug Strange Theology. He's been doing a lot of good repin on the Rogan stuff and tracking that developments. But yeah,
Nice.
thanks everyone. Catch you later.
All right. Any last words, guys? No?
Thank you, Luke.
All right. Until next time. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Peace out.